country were hearing about the brutality of November the 17th. Just days old, the student strike and information war were already having a profound impact as more and more citizens took to the streets in support of their kids.
The key psychological difference, I think, was that the people started to realize that they are beating our children. And that was something very different than attacking the demonstration of the Charter 77, putting Václav Havel to prison.
I think that gave the critical momentum and threw the whole nation behind their kids.
Having failed to anticipate mass public condemnation, regime officials seemed paralyzed.
Ony sametové dny se ukázalo, že to vedení komunistické strany je zcela nepřipravené přijmout nějaká zásadní rozhodnutí. Protože zase nezapomínejme, že oni byli zvyklí jednat na základě pokynů z Moskvy a Moskva mlčela.
Though Gorbachev had sent clear signals that Soviet forces would not intervene in Eastern Europe, Czechoslovak authorities seemed unable to comprehend them.
It seems to me that the Communist Party basically suffered a huge shock after November 17, 1989. They were totally sidelined and the structures began to disintegrate.
In desperation, hardliners within the regime called for the assembly of loyalist paramilitary forces known in Czechoslovakia as the People's Militia.
We had witness reports about the Communist Party People's Militia getting arms, getting the people in uniforms into buses. The situation was really, really tense.
Despite the danger, students sent word across the city that plans were underway for a demonstration in Wenceslas Square the following day. No one could say whether the citizens of Prague would show up and risk being beaten. But on Tuesday, November the 21st, with communist regimes in neighboring countries collapsing under the weight of popular pressure, the People's Militia stood down, as the citizens of Prague responded in a way that only 4 days earlier would have seemed unthinkable.
The young people were really kind of pushing the envelope, and I think that in 1989 it was a case of so many parents looking at their children marching in these demonstrations and saying, we have to back them up. The time has come.
The students had a slogan that really got me. We ask you people of 68 to join us students of 89, and I felt that this was a very important point, because it showed that all what those parents were doing for them, thinking that they were helping them, was in fact not necessary at all. And that the kids understood that, they don't want that. They don't want that regime, and they don't want their parents supporting that regime, thinking that they are supporting their children.
That evening, over 200,000 citizens jammed the city square to demand change. The next day, the crowd swelled to 500,000.
I will never forget the atmosphere. Just the sea of people with the same hope. It was, you could almost touch the air, how vibrant it was.
Addressing the crowd from a balcony, Václav Havel was deeply concerned. If the people turned violent and sought vengeance against the regime, everything would be lost. Appealing for restraint over the microphone, Havel suggested to the crowd, "We are not like them."
Já jsem tuto větu zvolal v takovém, to byla půlmilionová demonstrace a měl jsem projev a v takovém je to třeba vidět v té situaci, v tom kontextu, kde šlo o to, aby se lidé neuchylovali k násilí, aby se postavili prostě za slušnost a za pravdu.
Many understood what Havel meant. If they wanted to create a just society, it could not be built on retaliation.
We were very lucky to have people like Havel as leaders of the revolution, because these people had done a lot of thinking. They suffered a lot under the regime, but they also were smart enough to understand that the regime wasn't simply them and us.
With 500,000 people in the streets and the Communist Party in disarray, regime representatives proposed negotiations with Václav Havel and the Civic Forum. By Friday, party officials who just days earlier had ordered citizens' militias to attack protesters announced their intention to resign.
At the end of the first week, the Czech television and the Czech radio started to show what's really happening on the streets and on the meetings, and that was probably the key point in which the regime finally lost any chance to influence what's happening.
And we were surprised again and again when they were just giving up.
All these people who were in prison and who were the outcasts of society were suddenly dealing with, you know, all the top apparatchiks, the top establishment guys who everybody feared. I couldn't believe it somehow. It was such a thrill.
As the regime moved inescapably towards collapse, the Civic Forum and student representatives found themselves increasing their demands on an almost hourly basis. Time was running out for the communist regime. Demonstrations were growing so large, organizers had to abandon Wenceslas Square for a larger venue overlooking the city.
It was basically almost all inhabitants of the Prague.
My však nadále trváme na vytvoření parlamentní komise, průběh a výsledky vyšetřování.
All people, there were fathers and mothers with the kids sitting on their shoulders.
There was this collective feeling of we can do anything.
Přátelé, pravda a svoboda musí zvítězit.
The following day, 3/4 of the population of Czechoslovakia supported a nationwide labor strike. Assisting regime representatives in their negotiations with the Civic Forum, Oskar Krejci understood the end was near.
Během 10 dnů si ujasnili, že ten rozklad moci je tak veliký, že je možné tu moc nejen kritizovat, nejen s ním vést dialog, ale je možné tu moc uchopit.
Incredibly, just 11 days after the student demonstration of November the 17th, the Communist Party of Czechoslovakia announced its intention to give up its monopoly on political power.
You didn't know if you should be crying or laughing, or, you know, you were completely overwhelmed by the situation, taken over by the situation.
Just 4 weeks later, on December the 29th, 1989, Václav Havel, the former outlaw playwright, was elected the first president of post-totalitarian Czechoslovakia.
The regime was fortified for 40 years, but then the death of the regime, it happened as a matter of just few days.
Děkuji vám.
What seemed a fairy tale ending, however, would not last for long. Controversy soon erupted over Havel's stance towards former regime collaborators, which many considered to be too soft.
You know, Havel is very often criticized for not being more harsh, and I disagree with that very strongly. I think that he basically managed to create an environment in which everyone, maybe with the exception of former police agents and the most brutal perpetrators of communist regime, had a chance to participate in this new endeavor.
I'm a person who would go on a much more sharper cut. I don't need to kill somebody or to hang somebody. No, to not collaborate.
And my suggestion was that they should pay, that they should have been punished and still should be punished.
It's important to give chance to the people to change their minds and their behavior.
V těch totalitních poměrech každý je tak trošku spoluodpovědný a každý je tak trošku obětí. Ta hranice není ostrá mezi těmi, kteří jsou obětmi a tvůrci toho systému.
For those who appreciate what Havel did to help liberate Czechoslovakia from communist rule, his commitment to peaceful change has not been forgotten.
Havel is one of the greatest figures of the century in a sense that he, just like Gandhi in India or Mandela in South Africa, advocated a kind of change that relied on values of non-violence, dialogue, ideas, and he actually managed to bring about a change, the value of which becomes apparent only much later.
A generation later, however, questions about the past and how to regard the choices people made under communism remain largely unanswered.
I have this feeling of complete unclarity about what my family really did during the communist regime. We would talk, of course, about it. The stories would change.
After 1989, my parents, they didn't want to talk about that much. You know, what happened, like what particularly to them.
Honestly, I don't remember a specific story to tell.
Do you know, I think that these young people don't know nothing about it because their parents haven't the interest to speak about it. Because the children could ask them, and what did you done in this time, my dear father, my dear mama, or my dear teacher?
But many people who grew up in families that struggled against the communist regime, such as the grandchildren of Dana Niemcova, have a different experience.
Me and Malka, as a part of this huge family who was doing against it something, we are being reminded every day. So that's the reason why we will never forget it.
However proud or confused young Czechs feel about their family history during the communist era, many acknowledge that the collective failure to address the past has had an alarming effect on their generation.
Every year on the 17th of November, which is the anniversary of the Velvet Revolution, journalists make some kinds of interviews with young people, with children, with older people about the communist regime and about the Velvet Revolution. The majority of kids replies to the question, what was the Velvet Revolution? I don't know.
I don't know if today's young people really believed in these ideals that were very vivid in the revolution of 1989.